Hello and welcome to Story Skeptic. So finally, The Northman is on cinema. Of course, I went to watch it, and there's a lot of stuff to say about this movie. And a bit similar to Robert Eggers' last movie, The Lighthouse, I was kind of split down the middle. Some part of me liked the movie, and another part of me don't like the movie. And that's just his type of movies. I think they are very divisive. And I actually like that. That's why I'm looking forward to each of his films, because I know it's not like the usual stuff you get when you go to cinema, watching like the latest Marvel movie or like Dumbledore's Secrets. And there's a lot to be said about the movie. I have some critiques, but I'll save them for the end of the video. Spoilers, by the way. The plot is very familiar. If you've seen The Lion King, you basically know the story. And Lion King is basically Hamlet, which is then inspired by Norse saga, which is about Amleth, with a very similar story. In a way, it's gone back to the really original tale. I think that's really cool. I really like the idea of this revenge plot. I think it's the perfect plot for a Viking movie, because so much of Viking culture and the ideals of a man back in those days was related to honor. And since there were basically no law enforcement, people themselves had to right the wrongs done in society. The film was divided into chapters, like 6, 7, 8 chapters or something like that, which I really like. It tells the viewer right away that this is a story, and it gives it this saga-like feeling being presented in that way. The actors were great. I think Alex Skarsgård really sells this role, and it looks to be such a demanding role, and he delivers. There wasn't a moment I didn't believe them as these type of characters. And then we have Anya Taylor-Joy, who just like really fits this character, who speaks in this Russian accent. She's playing Olga, the love interest to Amleth. One of my favorite moments with her in this film is the last scene we see with her. I don't remember if she's cursing someone or if she's asking for like help, but she almost speaks to the gods, and it's this witch-like performance, and it's all in one shot, and she's walking on this Viking ship while she asks for this with her hands stretched out, and I just remembered it. It really struck a chord with me, so that was brilliant. And then we have, of course, Amleth's mother, who is played by Nicole Kidman, and I thought she was really great. I think her character is really important in this film, in the story. Minor characters were also pretty great, like Willem Dafoe, obviously, though he was in it very brief. And Ethan Hawke, I think that was one of my favorite performances, was him as a king. He just felt so kingly. I don't know how to say it, but I just think Ethan Hawke and Oscar Novak, this kid playing Amleth, together, I thought their chemistry was great. And it's such a crucial part of the film in how Amleth adores his father and looks up at him as the king. And I think Ethan Hawke, though his appearance is brief, I think he really has a presence and gives off this mythical feeling of being a great king. Then we have his brother, Fjolnir, played by Claes Bang, which is an actor I never seen before. He plays it really seriously. There's not a lot of ups and downs. He's really monotone. And I loved it. It was just something about him being so serious, especially in the first chapter, that made him so scary. So it really made me want to check out his other works as well. And there's a scene quite early in the movie with the uncle. It's the scene when he betrays the king. Basically, this scene from The Lion King.
Long live the king.
I thought this was a really nice scene. The cinematography was beautiful. The heavy snow falling like that. It's just after a ritual where Amleth is like becoming a man, and his father and him is just walking out of the temple, and it's a calm scene with snow falling slowly downwards, and it's really nice. And like young Amleth is just trying to catch snow with his mouth. Just such a childlike thing to do. It's like it reminds you that he's still just a kid. And like in the very same shot, an arrow whizzes by and hits his father. That was one of my favorite scenes. Him getting killed and they chasing young Amleth, and him even fighting, and really good stuff. And him rowing away and just having his mantra.
I will avenge you, father! I will save you, mother! I will kill you, Fiona!
And you can feel that mantra. You know in that moment that's going to follow him the rest of the movie. And it does. I thought this first chapter was perfect. It really gives the story right away a clear direction. So all that was fine, like the plot and the actors and all of that. But one of my biggest concerns going into this movie was if the big budget and a big studio would compromise with Robert Eggers' style, with his vision. Because he makes like The Witch and the Lighthouse is so special, and that works for a low budget with a niche audience. But here he's making it for a big audience, and he really has to get the studios and the producers on board with his ideas. And I know there's some stuff that early on that he wanted to have that was like shut down, like having the characters speak literally Old Norse. But just like 10 minutes in the cinema and my worries were laid to rest. This is a Robert Eggers movie, and there's a lot of stuff here that isn't in like quote unquote normal movies. Really drawn out Viking rituals, and like just the dialogue, the way they speak, though it's not in like strictly in Old Norse, it has this what I like to call elevated language. It's certainly Shakespearean, and it has all his trademarks, like the attention to detail, long shots, filming only with one camera, really focusing in on the craft of cinema. Building this atmosphere is, like, I think even more important to him than the actual plot and the characters. And it seems like this is the case with the Northman. You're really into this. You're into this Viking world. It feels like they went in a time machine and just brought cameras and just filmed the Vikings, the sets and the costumes, and the way it's so dirty, and it doesn't have this action Hollywood makeup on top of it, if that makes any sense. Like, stuff doesn't have to look cool. The way people die in the movie isn't over dramatic. Like, I saw Robert Eggers breaking down one of the scenes where he said this.
It was really hard for the stunt guy who played the fishermen who fall over here, because they're all stunt guys and they're used to like doing cool stuff, and they wanted to they would and do these like pirouettes and stuff like off the boat. And I kept saying, like, pretend like you've never seen a movie before in your life. Pretend you've never seen like anything. You've never seen your reflection before. Like, you you just need to die like a peasant. It was difficult, but I think that death, it was really nice.
And I feel like that's the way he treats everything within filmmaking. To get it real, make it look like a museum, transport the audience back to this time. That's the main focus, and he does that really well. So I was really glad to see that. And on the other hand, he still hasn't dropped like the supernatural stuff, like from the lighthouse with the mermaids and the witches in The Witch. I think he's like doubled down on it. I was actually surprised of the amount of fantasy elements that was used in this movie. That was some of my favorite parts, especially how he used it. Like, to build the Viking mythology is like the thing I'm left with that I think he did the best. Just trying to put us into the Viking mindset. What did the Northmen believe in back in those days? They believed in all this stuff, and he does it in such an interesting way. It's not obvious that the fantasy elements are really happening, maybe except some small parts, but almost everything could just be in the heads of the Vikings. Some really clear examples of that is when Amleth breaks into this burial chamber with this Viking ship and a dead Viking, and he goes over to grab this sword from him. And I was really surprised when this dead Viking just stood up from the dead, and he basically has to fight this zombie. And there's a fight scene, and he kills the zombie Viking. When he does, it jumps back in time to right before he grabs the sword. And when he grabs it this time, the dead guy is just a dead Viking, and it just collapses into a dust of bones. To me, it indicated right away that all these fantastical elements are not really happening. They're in the mind of the characters. And another good hint to this is when Amleth afterwards goes and picks off the Fjolnir's guys one by one in the nighttime, and all the other Vikings are trying to make sense of it. And they think it's their gods that they have mispleased or something like that. And there's some dramatic irony there, because we know that it's just Amleth running around and killing people in the night. Everything he does gets interpreted by the Vikings who live there to be some sort of punishment from the gods. And it's really interesting seeing them justifying these horrible acts. I thought that was the best part of the whole film, just the way he put us modern people into this Viking mindset and made us like see these mythological things, like all the rituals and the Nightblade. Oh my god, just as a fantasy fan, I need to geek out a bit on the Nightblade. I just thought that the simple idea of only being able to unsheath a blade at night was just really cool, and it made for interesting situation. And it just fits thematically with what Amleth is trying to do. He is trying to be like some revenge in the night, and the way he just put this blade to rest that day and gets it at night. I just think it works really well. And before he got this blade, a Viking shaman told him where it was, and we got this kind of flashback to when the Nightblade was forged. And in that moment, I just felt this really epic feeling rushing over me. And it was like exactly the same feeling I had the first time I watched Lord of the Rings. Just that sequence of the Nightblade being forged with a couple of people hammering on it, and it was just really epic. I thought it was an amazing scene. It's so mythical, so otherworldly. Yeah, I loved it. But there's one thing I want to say about the Nightblade. I felt there were a lot more potential surrounding that blade that never played out. Like what would happen if it was unsheathed and still out at day. And I also just waited for this really suspenseful scene where he would have had to be fighting off people, and in the fight he was losing and the sun was setting, and at the very last moment he could like unsheath it and use the Nightblade. But it never happened. Either it was used at the night or you can use it in daytime. I won't lie, I wanted more out of that. And maybe that's just because I'm a big fantasy fan and just wanted more. That brings me to the cinematography, which was, surprise, surprise, really great. It's like if you don't even like the movie, you can just watch the movie. I mean, with no sound, and it's beautiful. And if you just pause the film, I think there's like 50 shots that are almost like a painting or very good photography or something like that. It's really atmospheric, quite dark, but not in a way that you can't see what's happening, but there's like very high contrast in the lighting. And one of the reasons I think it's so good is because just the amount of storyboards he made, and how he and the DP, Jaron Blasky, works together with only one camera. They don't really shoot coverage, which is basically just shooting the same scene over and over and over again, like in different compositions, like close-up, extreme close-up. You maybe have a shot of both of them, and then you will have a lot of freedom editing the movie in post. But they don't do that. So they're really disciplined, and you notice that when you watch the movie. It looks great. He did incorporate this visual family tree that Amleth gets like visions to from time to time. I really like the concept of it, but I didn't think it was that good. That was like the one thing that kind of felt a bit cheap to me. I don't know if people feel the same, but I just think that it could have been done a lot better. Anyways, other than that, all the camera work was great, the long shots. And I want to talk a bit about these long shots, especially like in the second chapter and some of the other fight scenes later on. Because they're not editing that much in the fight scene, the scenes might feel slow and almost unrealistic for people, because today we're so used to this modern way of editing movies. Like a fight will have like hundreds of cuts in them. So when we suddenly just get one shot, it gets a lot more realistic, but it might even feel slow for people because we're so used to this breakneck speed. But in a way, I really appreciate it. Though not every fight scene needs to be done like this, but there's an art to it. There's something about showing the entire fight scene and showing the stunt work and all of that. It grounds the film a bit more, though it gets kind of a slower pace. It helps the film achieving one of its primary goals, which is making it realistic. And it really achieves that. It feels like brutal and harsh, the cinematography. It's gritty, raw in a way. And when the movie comes out, I will definitely break down my favorite shot of the movie. Since I covered a lot of stuff, it just feels natural to talk a bit about the music as well. And I will just say that it doesn't really stick with me, if that makes any sense. I think it's perfect for the movie. It works, but it's not something I would go home and listen to, like find the soundtrack and listen through it. It almost feels less than film music and more like music in that world. They use Viking instruments. There are a lot of emphasis on drums, like these really ancient tribal-like drums. And it gets quite loud and in your face, but the melody is not something you will go and whistle to. And much like Robert Eggers' other movies, the music has never been something which takes the center stage, like the music of John Williams. But that type of music would kind of break with Robert's vision. So it's not bad. I think it's good. It's just the perfect fit for this movie. Okay, so that's all the things that makes me love the movie. And I just really love the way he approaches a project, how he is like an author. But I have some critiques, and it's mostly personal, but maybe you will agree with some of them. It's just basically that I thought this film was very well made, beautifully shot, with a timeless story, but I wasn't like hooked by it. The characters are too unrealistic. They speak in a manner that's so poetic and unnatural that it's difficult to get empathy with them. And I think one of the biggest things that is to its detriment is basically that Amleth is too jacked, he's too ripped, he's just so strong and unstoppable that to me, in this revenge tale, there is no suspense, there's no tension. I'm not like concerned that he's going to die. There wasn't a single moment in the movie that I didn't think he was going to get his revenge. And that makes me just feel like I'm waiting for it to happen. I feel at any point of his stay at the farm of Fjolnir, he could have killed everyone there. That's just the biggest problem for me. I just really missed this kind of empathy building, and I thought the chapter two part, when he goes in this berserk raid, was vital for this. And it did kind of the opposite. It showed him just like a killing machine. Yeah, that works if you're kind of setting up a Rambo story where endless Vikings will try to attack him when he's at Fjolnir, and it's just about testing his physical strength. But that wasn't the movie. We got a movie where we want to see his revenge. We want to see him very similar to Lion King and The Gladiator. Like in The Gladiator, we want him to kill the Emperor. And we know that Maximus is a really great warrior, but he isn't like unbeatable. And before the final combat, he gets stabbed in the back, really making him the underdog of the fight. And the same with The Lion King, which Robert Eggers even talks about.
You know, he wants to avenge his father, save his mother, kill his uncle. But then over the years, he's lost his way and he's become this, this mercenary. This is the Hakuna Matata part of The Lion King, only with a lot more killing and blood.
Yeah, so this is the warrior version of Simba, while Simba is just eating bugs and relaxing and being a really lazy lion. So his return will be even more difficult for him. When he comes back, he has to fight to become a king. He has to fight to get his revenge, and it's an uphill struggle for him. He hasn't been doing push-ups the last 10 years. He hasn't been like bodybuilding with Timon and Pumbaa. And when he's coming back, it's like he can just easily defeat Scar. That's kind of what this feels like, for me at least. Amleth just needs to get his hands on some weapon, and it almost feels like he doesn't even need a weapon to defeat Fjolnir. There's a point in the movie where he's playing this old football hockey game thing, this Viking game, and the mountain is basically in the movie, and he just destroys the team. And at the moment, it breaks out a fight between him and the mountain, and Amleth just destroys the mountain, and that just makes Amleth even more powerful. So in the end, when he kills Fjolnir, it's just like, that was what I was waiting for. There was no like triumph. It just felt inevitable. I just wished I was more personally engaged with the main characters. And I think it would have helped if Amleth was an underdog, or he could still be this strong. But then Fjolnir would have to be stronger. Maybe he was best by the gods or something like that, but we need an unfair advantage, and that kind of never happens. And I think also making us care about the characters, the dialogue comes into play. I think if the dialogue was more like it is in The Lighthouse or The Witch, just the way the Vikings would speak in those times, it would be easier to connect with the characters and make us care. Because this wasn't the way Vikings speak, this was more Shakespearean. It was very artistic, and that works in one way, but in the other way, you're always kind of aware that these are actors, because their dialogue is so unnatural. At times, that won't bother me, but when it's the whole film, it can be a bit too much. That said, building Amleth into this killing machine works fantastically well for this one scene. And that scene is when he tells his mother who he is, and that it's the part of his plan to save her. He's been training all his life for this moment. And when he's about to save his mother, he's grown up so much now that she doesn't recognize him. So he pulls her to the side and tells her that he is his child, that he is Amleth. And I thought the scene was great. It was one of the highlights in the movie, because when you have made this warrior person, and all the conflict the movie is based on is basically how strong he is, how good he is to fight. How do you make a main character like that? How do you make him vulnerable? How do you strike where he can't defend himself? Because you can just throw warriors on him and he will defeat all of them. But this scene, she doesn't attack him physically. She attacks him mentally and creates this internal conflict by making this whole revenge seem meaningless in a way. And she does this by breaking the illusion of his father and about her. And that's basically that she was in on it. She wanted his father to die. She made Fjolnir kill him. And she didn't really like Amleth. Amleth was just like a child she had to have. And what she considers her real son is the sons she has with Fjolnir. And she really taunts him in the scene. And I thought that was so good because this is a bit like the interrogation scene in the Batman with the Joker. Like, Batman can't fight him. He can't use his strength. The Joker fights him where he is weak, where he's vulnerable. And the same thing is with Amleth. He can't fight his way out of this. And I thought that was such a brilliant scene. But in the end, he just decides to get his revenge anyways, and that includes his mother now. This story just reverts back to this physical conflict, which again, Amleth is a killing machine. So then the suspense kind of just disappears, and we're back to the old conflict for the rest of the movie. Still, we got an epic fight at the volcano. Reminded me a lot of Simba and Scar's fight with all the flames and smoke. But in a way, I wish that maybe Amleth would give up on his revenge, or that he would have to engage, that the climax wouldn't be just physical, that he would square up with his mother in another way than just killing her, that he would use his words, that Olga would help him. And that's another small critique, but I talked with a friend of me. He said that the way Olga was set up, it was that she said quite early when they both get captured, she said she doesn't use power and the muscles and violence like the man does. She uses her like intellect to get the things she wants. So that gives us some types of expectations of her using her intellect and maybe help out in some sort of clever way. But that goes almost nowhere. It's the one thing she does is like put these mushrooms into this soup they give to the Vikings so they all get like high as fuck. It's a funny and cool scene. But other than that, she kind of drops out towards the last act of the movie. And I really wish that she would come in and guide, like show Amleth what he's missing. How can he get his revenge in another way? How can he kind of defeat his mother and Fjolnir, not only with violence? It's just the same thing as with the Nightblade. It's really cool, but I feel there's more potential there, like story-wise, in story structure and character arcs and just like satisfaction for the audience. But other than that, even though I probably enjoyed it less than The Lighthouse and The Witch, I really appreciate these types of movies. And I think it's by far the best Viking movie I've ever seen, including like TV shows and all of that. I'm still extremely curious to see how Robert Eggers continues his filmography. And if his next project is going to be the remake of Nosferatu, I would really be looking forward to that. I think he would be perfect for that remake. And Nosferatu I watched like last Christmas, and it surprised me how much I loved this old silent film. If this is the film he's gonna remake, I'm gonna revisit this old gem and break it down for you. So anyways, tell me what you think about The Northman. Did you hate it? Did you love it? Or are you somewhere in the middle like me? And let me know if you like these longer reviews. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.